Fire used to be a thing that was considered really dangerous back in single player Don't Starve. With its fast spread rate and high damage, you could actually die from fire in the game if you weren't careful. However, in Together, fire is a shell of what it used to be, but it's still pretty misunderstood. So let's go ahead and take a deeper look into fire. Fire itself seems pretty simple. It gives heat and can burn things. There are two different forms that fire can be, safe and unsafe. Safe being sources that won't spread fire, that being the fire pit and the scaled furnace. And unsafe fires are fires that are able to light things on fire while near them, these being campfires, star callers, and all the natural fires that occur by burning structures and items. The campfire has different levels, and each level changes how they will burn objects. It also depends on the item's propagation factor. You see, every item in the game has a propagation factor. This factor describes how an object will burn. It gives information like how much heat the object can take in before it starts burning, how far the fire reaches to spread to other entities, and how much heat it gives. Also, if it can do damage, and how far the damage area is. The campfire itself can't actually do damage, but you've probably seen it start a fire because it was overfueled. And that's because the level of propagation a campfire has is based on the amount of fuel that is left in it. The lowest level campfire has a 1 wall unit of spreading, hardly anything in all, and can only really burn small objects that are right on top of the fire. Level 2 increases the spread to 2 wall segments and ups the heat to 5. The same goes for level 3, but the range increases to 3 wall segments. And level 4 being a max fire that has a spread of 4 wall units and gives off 10 heat, almost instantly starting fires on small objects. A star caller has 15 heat and a propagation of 2 wall units. Other than those two, every fire follows the following 3 types of spreading and burning: small, medium, and large propagators. Small propagators are the quickest to catch fire. They only have a 2 wall radius of damage. This will look the same for the spread radius too, but slightly bigger, being 3 wall units. Medium propagators increase the size of the fire. The radius for doing damage is increased to 3 wall units, which looks like this, and their spread radius is 5 wall units. Medium propagators also produce more heat. And large propagators have the largest spread radius of 6 wall units and produce the most amount of heat. These large propagators are only really relegated to structures though, so we can't really use them for much. What you may notice is that the burn time is not set on any of these. That is because burn time is completely separate from how strong a fire is. It's a separate line of code with a number on it for small, medium, and large. Small burn times are 10 seconds, medium is 20, and large is 30. These burn times can be placed on any items and can also have a unique burn time chosen specifically for that entity, like spores, charcoal, trees, and explosives. All that changes during spring though. Spring changes how effective fires are. It lowers the damage range, and it also lowers spread range. You can see how normally charcoal would damage me in this radius, but in spring it doesn't. Same for spreading. This rope would easily catch fire just outside of the wall, but it takes much longer for it to get enough heat from the coal to ignite it. This is all because the spread range and damage range gets reduced in spring. However, rain doesn't actually affect any of this. Rain can help in slowing down the spread of fire in that it decreases the amount of heat that is dissipated, and this dissipation increases in strength based on how heavy the rain is. So much so that the rain can even reverse smoldering. Now we get into smoldering. Small items will start to smolder faster than items that have a bigger propagation. If you burn a small item next to one that has a big propagation, the large item may not even get enough heat to actually start smoldering. But if you do the opposite, the small item tends to start smoldering much sooner. The heat that was gained from the burnt item does go away slowly, and it decays at about half a degree per second. That whole heat capacity stat is actually how scaled flooring works. Scaled flooring increases an item's heat capacity by reducing the amount of heat items placed on it receive. It's about 5 times less heat than they normally would receive, meaning you really need lots of unsafe fires to start smoldering. If you like using the lave, scaled flooring actually makes it so that the heat given off of the lave will never burn objects that are near it. Now is damage. All this about heat, temperature, and fire size also leads to the damage the fire does. Fire damage is the same as everything else we have covered, but there are still some small consistencies to what damage is done, and it's still based on the small, medium, and large propagators. Small propagators will end up doing the least amount of damage out of our 3, and with some really crazy ranges as well. I ended up getting 87 damage to 125 damage for about 30 seconds of burning. That's between 2.9 and 4.16 damage per second. It goes to show you that these smaller fires really aren't as dangerous as they seem. Medium fires ended up doing slightly higher damage than smaller fires, lowest being 91 damage, and the highest being enough to kill a normal player at about 150. The fence burned for about 20 seconds, meaning the DPS for medium fires are around 4.5 and 7.55. And finally, the large propagators. These did a lot more damage than a standard character can handle. Poor Woody constantly died. The lowest damage I got was around 125, and the highest was around 165. This was for the wall burning for 20 seconds, meaning that large propagators have a damage per second of around 6.25 and 8.25. This also applies to lighting creatures on fire with the fire staff, torch, or fire dart. Light up a deerclops and a rabbit, and you'll see the fire will do more damage to deerclops, but not enough damage to kill the rabbit. You can also see that deerclops stays on fire for much longer than the rabbit does. Large creatures will be lit on fire for 10 seconds, which is why deerclops lasted much longer than the rabbit. Medium creatures will last 8 seconds on fire, and small creatures only burn for 6 seconds. Also, with this type of damage, what you use to ignite the creature matters. If you use a fire staff versus say fire darts or a torch, the fire staff will cause the creature to take more fire damage compared to the torch or the dart. Standing next to a large burning fire did only about 150 damage over 20 seconds. And lighting a creature on fire does around 10 to 70 damage. That really does not sound that impressive, but what's interesting is that you're able to add another wall to that fire and the damage will increase. That's because every instance of being inside a fire increases the damage you receive. So that means you could stack flammable objects on top of each other, you end up taking massive amounts of damage. But there ends up being a hard cap for how much fire damage you can take, and this ends up being around 116 damage per second. If you try to go beyond this point, you will end up seeing the health drain stop for a moment and continue again, potentially causing you to lose out on damage. The only reason you want to use more items is to mitigate the effect of the smolder time, because smolder time is different for every entity. In order to reach the damage cap with each of the propagation types, you'll need 30 small propagation objects, 25 medium propagation, and 20 large propagation for the fire damage to be capped out. But honestly, the most efficient way to do the most damage per item is actually with small propagators, because they are easy to get and also ignite faster when exposed to a heat source. Just make sure you use one that has a long burn time like rope or similar items. And so now, finally, what can we do with this? Honestly, not really much. You could trap mobs and use fires to do damage against them. You may have seen other YouTubers do this in the past. You can speedrun Bee Queen on day 2 as well. Those are interesting uses of fire, but I don't think they truly show what fire is best at. Where fire really shines is not the damage it does, but the crowd control it provides. You see, many creatures will do this when they enter a fire. They panic and run around everywhere trying to avoid taking damage from the fire. During this panic, they will not attack the player, giving the player a chance to do damage against the enemy. Most enemies are affected by this, and the only ones that aren't really affected by it are really the large boss monsters like Deerclops, Goose, Bee Queen, etc. But because many creatures panic while on fire, we can use this on many tanky creatures that are affected, most notably Beefalo, Koalefants, Tallbirds, Bishops, Vargs, Eokus, and Spider Queens. Of course you can use this for smaller creatures, but I feel it's more likely you will burn the loot with these creatures. That is one of the things that every player can do with fire, and it's actually pretty effective in spring too, because the fire on the creature is smaller, meaning you can do this without even needing fire immunity. But speaking about fire immunity, we got Willow, and she opens up way more tech than you can imagine. But that will be for the next video. I hope you enjoyed these tricks and now know a bit more about how unique fire is. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, this has been Tara, and take care.